Hello, and welcome to our next installment of the Quick Start Guide to 3D Modeling in Blender. I'm your host, Crompwell, and today we're actually going to start looking at more 3D modeling tools and making our first 3D model. So you can see here that I've started a brand new scene. I just did that by going to File, New, General, and if I don't save, it's exactly the same. And you can see here everything's reset itself and we're no longer in the Modeling tab. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to grab my light and my camera. So I'll hold shift and select that. And I'm just going to hit the H key to hide them. The other way you could do that is from Object, Show Hide, Hide Selected, or you can just toggle the eyeballs in the outliner. It's totally up to you. Next, we're going to select our cube and we're going to go right into the Modeling tab. Now, today I think I want to show you how to use primarily two different tools for modeling, and those are the loop cut and extrusion tools. So we looked at extrusion a little bit. Let's take a look at loop cut. Well, this cube isn't the most exciting thing in the world, and there's more to 3D than cubes, of course. So if I grab it and I can move it, so let's go back into object mode to do that actually, and I'll move it. So let's move it up on top of the grid just a little bit, and let's go back into edit mode. And now you can ask yourself, well, there's only so many things I can do with a cube, right? If we are in vertex selection mode and I select one of these vertices, you can see that, well, there's not a whole lot I can do with that. Yeah, maybe I could taper it and kind of change its form basically, but I need more geometry to do things with this. And so of course, one way we could do that is we could use the extrude option. So let's go into face selection mode and let's select this face and we can extrude it. We could also just move that face instead of extruding it as well. So let's do this. And I think what I ultimately want to do is maybe I want to create like some sort of bipedal creature, like a low poly. So low poly means it's not going to have a lot of polygons, but it's going to have enough for us to actually create something. So maybe I want to create a low poly llama. So let's go with that. So I can move this and then I can extrude it. So let's extrude this face here. Before I forget, let me turn on my screencast keys so you can see what I'm pressing. I'll just close this over here. And so I've extruded perhaps the bottom of the neck. And then I'm going to grab this and I'm just going to extrude this up, and maybe that'll be the neck of our llama. And I can also scale it. So let's scale this as well. Well, I don't want to scale it just on the X. So let's see, can I grab this in the inside? Yeah, there we go. Oops. So here's an interesting thing that happens sometimes is if your mouse cursor is too close, you can actually get things to flip in on themselves. And that's kind of a problem. So this is one of the drawbacks with using this sort of small cursor here. I know it still works with the big one, but essentially if your mouse cursor is too close to the center point, you're actually going to get a lot of crazy, you might not even get action there actually. You can get some crazy deformations and things not quite working the way that you want them to. And so what's happening here is the geometry is flipping inside on itself, which is a really bad thing that we want to avoid. So let's undo that. And let me just scale this in like this. There we go. And let's make the head for our llama. So I'm just going to extrude this up. And this is going to be the back of the head. And so this I can extrude forward. And there, we kind of got a llama face. Let's scale this in a little bit. There we go. There's our llama. And well, we're going to need legs, right? Because right now our llama's looking more like I don't know, maybe some sort of strange worm with a llama head on it. And we don't want that, so let's just move this down a little bit, give this a little pointed face for our llama. And we need to add in geometry at this point to figure out exactly how we can add legs to this thing. So we need to do what's called adding a loop cut. And we can either use this option here, or we could also use the Control R shortcut. I'll use this option here just to show you what it looks like. So here I can put in a cut. I can also scroll, well, I should be able to scroll in the mouse wheel, but that's if I'm using Control R. Instead, when I add a cut there, it's still selected. I can actually change the number of cuts here to 2, and that's what I want. You can also change the smoothness to kind of inflate your model a little bit, which is kind of useful because we are creating a llama, aren't we? And I think that should be fine. And then I'll switch back to my selection tool here, and you'll notice that I probably need a cut in the back to get some back legs. So I'll hit Control R, and I'll click there, and now it wants me to slide. So when you use Control R, you have a slide option. So we'll slide this to the back a little bit, something like that, and that should work. And now we have the beginnings of our llama. So our llama is going to need a tail. So I'll probably hit Control R like this and slide that up a little bit. And that should be enough geometry, I think, for our llama. So Let's go to our select option, make sure we're in face selection mode. Let me just close that up down there. And I'll select this point, hold shift, or this face, I should say, and I'll shift and select another face and another face and another face. And this is going to become the legs for our llama. And I'm just going to extrude those down. So I'm going to tap E and then tap Z, extrude them down. And then I'm going to hit SZ0. So that's an interesting thing that we haven't seen before. And essentially what that's doing is it's flattening everything on the Z axis. So if I undo that, right, you can also do this with the scale tool here, and I could just grab this and scale this straight down. But however, we can go too far past. So I want to type in 0, and then there it goes. It actually flattens itself out. So now I want to look at the way that this llama is formulated in terms of its construction. You can see that the front legs are much thicker than the back legs. And that was because of how we placed some cuts and the way the geometry was. So we could take these front legs, select them both with the shift button, and we can kind of scale them so that the front legs are a little bit smaller, maybe a little cuter. That's what we're going for. And then the back legs, maybe we need to move some of these points or edges. So let's grab our move tool and let's say, how do I want to do this? So it looks like I need to grab this edge right here and then shift and grab the other edge on the other side and just use the move tool to kind of push those back a little bit. That way we don't have this strange kind of sloping action going on in here. So we'll move that. And then it seems like the same thing's happening on the back side, but it's not too bad. We can probably bring this in a little more. There we go. That's all right. And so we have a very basic llama shape going on here. Maybe we want to get more of this taper in the front, so we can grab this edge and this edge, and we can move that forward. And now we have a tapered llama going on. And then we need a tail for our llama, of course. So I can go to the edge selection here, grab this right here, and I can extrude. And of course, that's a little too thick, so I can scale this, of course. Maybe bring this back in just a little bit. So if we grab our move tool, this, and then we can give him a little fluffy tail. It doesn't have to be anything special. We could make it larger. We could also make it sync. So for example, if we put in another loop cut here, we can grab the face mode, and I can just extrude this with E and then hit Z. And now we have a sinking llama tail. Let's say he's sad and his tail is going down. That's certainly one thing that we could do. And we can also scale this down. So there's a number of ways that we can handle this. Maybe we want our llama to have ears. So we'll select this and shift select this, and we can extrude those up. And now our llama has ears. And congratulations, you've made your very first 3D model, which happens to be a llama. Personally, I don't like the way that this tail is looking, so I'll show you another interesting tool. Let's grab this edge. And if I double tap the G key, I can actually slide this and kind of slide it back up. I can do the same thing with this one here too, so I can evenly space things out. And there we go. That's looking a little less weird, although I should probably look at a picture of a llama to see exactly what its tail looks like. But I think that this is close enough. I think that if you were to hand this to a child, they'd understand, hey, that's an animal. That's a llama or something. So there we go. We've created our very first 3D model inside of Blender in hardly any time flat. And we did it properly, by the way. There's a number of ways that we could make a huge mess out of our 3D modeling skills in Blender. We can intersect the mesh on itself. So for example, like I showed you before, I think we could also do that here. If we kind of scale this too much, we can kind of intersect things. So that would be bad. If we scale them out too far, that's not really bad necessarily. I mean, it looks bad. This is not necessarily the worst thing. So if we wanted our llama to have extremely excited and giant ears, for whatever reason, we could definitely do that. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we want to be careful about that. I'll show you very briefly before I end this video another really interesting thing. We have the ability to kind of change the way tools interact with our mesh. So say we have these two faces selected and we want to scale these, but you notice that if you scale them in, they kind of squish together, and that's not what we really want. So if I undo that, you can see up here we have the ability to transform something by a pivot point, which is basically an approximation of that. It's trying to figure out where it wants to scale things based on, essentially, or to rotate things or move them. And so this is the transform pivot point, where we can tell it, well, we're going to pivot according to this area or transform it according to this area. So instead of using the median point, which is where it is by default, we can say individual origins. And what that's going to do is it's going to look at these two pieces of geometry and it's going to determine what the origin is for each of them. And now when we scale them, we don't have to worry about them trying to intersect on each other. And then we can work this way, so that way we can thin out these ears, perhaps like this, and give it more of a llama feel. We could also flatten them with SZ0, that still works technically. But there we go, we have, I'm gonna undo that because I kind of like them sloped a little bit. And there we go, we have our llama with his fixed ears. Just make sure to remember to turn this back to median point before you finish, and then tab out into object mode. And there we go, we have our llama. And let's say that we're so pleased with our llama, we want to render him. So if we hit the 0 key, you can see that we go into our camera view. Let's turn on our camera and our light. And obviously this is not going to do. So there's a couple ways that we could change this. We could grab the camera itself and move it, but that's a little tedious. So I'm just going to find a good view. I think right here might be nice. Maybe something like that. And then I'm going to say view, align view. And then I'm going to say align active camera to view, or you could use Control Alt Numpad 0, which is a little convoluted. And now what's going to happen is my camera will snap to the view, although it's still cutting off my llama's head a little bit there, and we don't want that. So while I have the camera selected and I'm looking through it, I can tap the G key, which allows me to move. And then if I tap the middle mouse button, I can pull my mouse back and kind of frame my llama. And let's say we want this to be an Instagram photo instead of like a full HD photo. I can come over here to my render output properties, and I can change this 1920 to 1080, or I could do 1920 by 1920, whatever I want, to make it square. And you can see there it's square if I zoom out by scrolling. And then I can tap G to move it again, and tap middle mouse button and kind of move it in to get my camera kind of focusing on my llama. Maybe I'll move this to the side just a little bit. And then I want to move this light up and maybe forward. So I need to grab the green one and move it forward. It's a little hard to tell sometimes where things are in 3D when you're looking at it from a fixed camera perspective like we were just doing. So it may be helpful to move out of this, kind of move your light where you want it. So I kind of want it above his head over here just a little bit so we can get some illumination. And I'll hit the 0 key to go back into my camera. And now if I hit render image, not file, I just render image, you can see here now we've created our llama. And maybe we need a floor, so I'll close this. And I'll go to add mesh plane, and that adds a floor in, and we need to scale it up. So let's scale it up just so that we can cover his feet. And then we'll move this down a little bit just so that his feet are right on top of it like that. And now I can click off, and now I can say render image. And there we go. We've got a llama with a floor. Now this is obviously not the most exciting lighting setup or the most exciting look for our 3D llama. And maybe there's a little bit of extra work that we can do to make it look better. But in the meantime, you've just created your very first 3D model inside of Blender. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. I will be looking to do more complicated setups in the future where we can talk about more specific things. We can probably get into a little bit of rigging and animation. We can do some texture and material work. I have lots of plans for the things that I would like to share on the channel. Now there's going to be a fair amount that I can't just share all of it because, well, I need to pay my bills and keep the lights on around here. And so I will be releasing time-lapse tutorials, and those time-lapse tutorials can be, so I'll show the time-lapse on the channel. You can purchase the tutorial to get the full un-time-lapse version with commentary, or maybe some without commentary. We'll see what people are interested in. And yeah, I'm looking forward to publishing more content. If you've got any suggestions, or you find this useful, or if you've got questions, leave your comments down in the comment section. And like always, if you find this useful, I really appreciate this. Subscribe, like, turn on notifications, all that fun stuff. Share it with anyone else who might find it useful. And I just want to thank you so much for sticking with me till the end of this video. Stay safe as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.